and it helps. That's the way it should be laddered in to help everyone prepare for the steps up that they're going to make through the sort of phases of the career. I think it's absolutely the right call to one, to bring it back, obviously, but two, to run it and run it in this way. And I think the clubs will find this to be the most sensible way of running reserves, and I do think it means more teams should be able to run reserves, because you're not having to put as much demand on your players, and hopefully it might mean more teams will be encouraged to run better level academies potentially too, if they can get that status, because it means you've got those you've got that pathway there.
It creates a proper ladder.
It does,
for the young lads to be able to find a way into getting enough experience to be able to start playing into first team rugby, which is right. I think you're spot on, Mark.
And we have seen some good kids perform really well this year. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
But think about like Morgan Gannon right now at Leeds is playing exceptionally at 17, 18 years old, and because he's had a few games but he's not been called on every week and sort of thing. Imagine where his progression would have been at if he'd managed to have the first half of the season playing in reserves and then coming into that first team. It would have been another step ahead, I think. And that's just one example. You could look around all the clubs at similar examples.
Will Price probably the same at Huddersfield. Another young lad coming into the setup who would have benefited from that sort of structure.
And with players like Will Price, they'd not be having to figure out what their best position in a sort of adult side is on the fly. They might, they've had an opportunity to try out different positions at the reserve level rather than having to try out at different positions in the senior side. I think that, totally spot on, David.
Yeah, very good.
And finally, the Rugby League World Cup bosses have announced new dates for the postponed 2021 tournament. The 5-week competition will now take place between Saturday the 15th of October and Sunday the 19th of November 2022, in between the Commonwealth Games and the FIFA Football World Cup. All 61 games will be shown on BBC channels. The opening match and the men's and women's double header finals will be played at St James's Park in Newcastle and Old Trafford in Manchester, respectively, as was originally planned for this year. Tournament bosses are still in talks with host towns, cities, and venues to hope to release a full match schedule by the end of this year. But that's positive stuff. It means we can book our hotels for Newcastle next year. I need to get on that before they cost as much as they fucking cost for Magic Weekend.
I need to book in with my sister-in-law in Hexham again, Mark.
And hopefully they'll get hopefully they'll be able to get the Scotland game up on in Newcastle on the next day as well, like they'd originally planned. That'd be very pleasing. I think it's positive that they've managed to get this agreed to be moved. It doesn't sound like the NRL are going to be moving their grand final, so that'll still be the first weekend of October. But Super League have moved theirs, which would have been the second weekend in October. They're moving theirs back a couple of weeks, aren't they? It sounds like. So it sounds like some cooperation and thought through there has happened, which is what we needed to get this tournament in before the World Cup starts.
Which is, it's an extremely difficult set of circumstances that the organising committee have found themselves in. I think this is the best that they can do in the circumstances.
And broadcast-wise, I think it was crucial to get this tournament finished before the World Cup matches started. There'll still be an element of media coverage overshadowing our World Cup with the Football World Cup, but that was always going to be the case because football overshadows everything constantly anyway in this part of the world. But this at least means the television coverage won't be impacted. We won't be bumped to behind in the scheduling on the BBC. Will still be the main sport that they're showing for that month.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm really looking forward to it, and let's hope nothing else gets in the way of what ought to be a really successful event, I hope.
Yep, exactly. I'd love to hear that the Keep Away Aussies and Kiwis have signed their signed their agreements already, and there's some sort of punishment if they change their minds. But we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited for next year. Okay, dokes. That's it for our abbreviated news this week. Thanks for those who got the fan views in. Look out for the Google form on the episode blog post so you can get your fan views in on the news for next week. We'll cover any bits of sort of Championship and League One news that have popped up as well over the last few days in our main show next week. Shout out, of course, as always, to BBC Sport Rugby League page and loverugbyleague.com. They've provided those news stories that we've just copied and pasted into our rundown to talk through and give our opinions on. So thanks to those guys for their hard work. Right. I need another beer before we start talking about the match reviews, David. So we'll be back in a bit, guys.
And a bottle of whiskey.
Match reviews time, and instead of talking about Super League, we're going to talk about the ageless wonder that is James Anderson and the first day of the Headingley test. No? Oh.
Mark, that's a pathetic attempt. Got to do that.
Okay, well, we'll talk about a team that plays at the other side of Headingley, shall we then?
Yes.
On Wednesday night, it was Wigan versus Leeds. It was 6-0 to Leeds at half-time. It was 14-0 to Leeds at full-time. Robert Hicks was the referee. Incomplete team stats. I think Bodine Thompson, I've said before, doesn't exist. So I can't do a fair comparison. But it's fair to say from what I did see of the team stats, Leeds came out on top and Wigan looked fucking atrocious. Individually, Ash Hanley 158 metres, Harry Newman 151 metres, Luke Briscoe 151 metres, Reece Martin 1 try assist and 140 metres. For the losing Wigan side, Joe Shorrocks worked hard for 47 tackles. Liam Farrell made 41 tackles, none of which were missed, so he had no missed tackles. Jackson Hastings, 6 tackle busts and 131 metres, give him his own fucking ball because he didn't want to give it to anyone else. And Liam Marshall, 120 metres.
Fan views. We've got quite a lot on this game, not surprisingly. Starting with the good doctor. Dr. Bob Phillips says, thanks, Wigan. Not only keeping up the form of last week, but being extra lovely and not even getting those cheeky little penalty points. Lovely lamb likes Leeds.
Nice alliteration, Bob. Matt Speakman said, while this isn't the worst Wigan team I've ever seen, that dishonour goes to 2006. This team, unlike 06, has plenty of very talented players on paper. It's hard to believe how far we've sunk from the back end of last year. We just look completely broken, but Leeds have only missed one game, so we can't say it's due to all the back-to-backs. They just played very simple rugby and we couldn't even do that against 12 men.
Jen Kay says, all is clearly not well at Wigan. I could accept this defeat if Leeds had played brilliantly, but they didn't even need to. Yes, we were missing Lulai and Powell, but we have 4 Man of Steel quality players and so should be able to cope. And someone needs to tell Lockers to get off the pitch all the time. I do, Jen, I do. It looks desperate.
It is desperate. White Pie said, utter dog shit. We could have played until midnight and not scored. Lee, we could still be playing now on Friday night and not fucking scored. The club is rotten at the moment and one of our greatest ever attacking players has coached any attack out of the side. Proves we relied too much on French last year and got to the grand final despite Lamb, not because of him. A touch unfair there. I'd say French was so good last year, that's totally true. But I don't think that Adrian Lamb didn't have a small part to play in that, I would say. It was his big call to move him. Anyway, Lamb still needs to go, no matter how much I think it's unfair to criticise him beyond this year. Sorry, what's next?
That's right. Ro Hayden says, good performance by both teams in the first 20 minutes, and then Wigan just fell apart and then got back in the game with 15 minutes to go. I think Lamb should ask for help from the coaching staff to help go around the problems.
Yeah, I don't think there was good performances by both teams. I think you're really looking for the positives there, buddy, and I'm here for it. But DG Knight said, like watching paint dry and Wigan are going from bad to worse. My only hope is Wigan Renaissance doesn't start on Monday. Second sin bin looked harsh to me, but Bateman getting smacked in the head went unpunished. So evens out? Question mark.
Pob the Viking says, a great game on paper that turned into a poor game from two poor sides. Leeds fans will be happy with the 2 points, but are far from convincing. Wigan just didn't look like scoring. Wigan desperately need a win to stop the rot, but it's not looking like any time soon.
Even when we were winning, we were rotten, Paul. Shoddy and Mungo said, the YouTube highlights don't show Wigan in possession. That's all you need to know about this one.
John Hamilton says, battle to see who could be less shit. Still, a win at Wigan is a massive boost, even if it was ugly. Leeds took their opportunities and Wigan couldn't get the ball to stick. 1 quarter of the game with a man advantage, failed to score and conceded. Love to see it. Decent amount of strong individual performance, just missing the cohesion to really get rolling. 13 different half pairs in the last 13 games, 1-9. Hash Agar in. Sorry, I was a bit slow there. Agar in.
It's normally Rob's hashtag that. Tom Andrews said, 3+ hours and counting since Wigan scored a try. Attacking threats like Bateman, Hardacre and Hastings suddenly dishing up nothing. I don't think I've ever seen a more glaring case of coaching issues in memory. Quality across the park, making basic errors and offering nothing more than pointless repetitive grubber kicks. Also, Gildart is going to get eaten in the NRL.
It wasn't great, was it, Mark?
I thought we'd hit rock bottom on Friday night, that second half. I was so angry about, as people could tell from my rant on Monday's show. But I still had optimism that was rock bottom and it would get sorted out. And there is enough individual quality on paper, like a few of the guys have said, for you to believe it could be turned around. But this was rock bottom. This was so horrible. The second half, I felt like I was at a funeral in the second half. It was, yeah, I just feel so hopeless now for the rest of the year. I was watching a team that really needed an off-season. I was watching a coach that really needs to go home for the sake of himself as much as anything else, not, let alone the team and stuff. I don't think anyone else coming in could have a big enough impact to turn this around, because there's lots of individual players trying to do things for themselves in that side at the moment, and that's a big part of the problem. Quality individual players, don't get me wrong, but they're taking too much on their own shoulders and it's not working out, and there's just no style, flair, nothing at all in attack. There is a big difference between this side and the 2006 side, because I think this side still has a defensive backbone, and the 2006 side did not. But yeah, it's horrible for me to watch. I'm sure everyone else is loving it. Leeds were good enough to win this game. They scored a nice try after half-time, didn't they? They did really well. Scrambling defence was really good in that 20 minutes where they had the extra man. Wigan had the extra man, because, there was nothing Wigan... actually, the defence did good. Wigan's attack was fucking absent. But Wigan, it was clueless in terms of ideas. They were not playing like they had a man advantage. And then in the second half, they were not playing with a desperation to win the game. There was 2 or 3 kickoffs in that second half where Wigan could have, because there was the penalty, there was the try, and there was the kickoff. Wigan could have gone short on all of them and tried to do something different, and they just pushed it into the corner, ambled up with a straight line, and kind of kept Leeds to no meters, but also at the same extent didn't fucking do anything to turn the ball over, to get on the front foot. It was, they were just running on empty.
Yeah, they are at the moment. I mean, it's quite clear that, I think there are 1 or 2 structural things that are an issue for Wigan, not least the fact that you really don't have a front row at the moment. I mean, you're missing your first choice hooker, and you don't have any. I'm not a big Singleton fan, but I mean, if George Burgess had worked out, if Tony Clubb hadn't put 3 stones on during lockdown, you'd have at least a front row to get you some penetration, some go forward to play the backs off. So I think
that's another thing that's slightly on Lamb this year. I mean, the conditioning of the forwards, I don't think is wholly on Lamb. I think the club have lost Mark Bitcombe 3 years ago and not
Yeah.
done enough to fill that gap in what should be